Good morning. It is Wednesday, April the 5th, and this is The Drill. I'm Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, and I'm welcoming all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. Today I'm going to be reading the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, then a very important chapter from Power Hungry, and then a few notes after that. So let's go ahead and go to the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for May 5th. I rule the sea and the waters by my strength. I rule the sea and waters by my strength. I am mightier than the noise of many waters or the mighty waves of the sea. The sea is mine, for I made it, just as I formed the dry land. When you go down to the sea in ships and do business on great waters, you will see my works and my wonders in the deep. It is I who commands and raises the stormy wind and who lifts up the waves of the sea. I cause them to mount up to the heavens and to go down again to the depths. I will calm the story so that its waves are still and guide you to your desired haven. I will make a way in the sea and a path through the mighty waters. Prayer declaration. Lord, you rule the sea and the waters by your strength, and you will not let any evil waters overflow my life. Your power will protect me, and no evil waves will rise up against me, nor will I be cast into the depths of the sea. Just as you dried up the sea and the waters of the great deep to make a road for the Israelites, so too you will make a road through the sea for the redeemed to cross over. Amen. And again, I read the Daily Declarations for Spiritual Warfare by John Eckhart because it is a reminder that God is a mighty God. God is a righteous God. It also is a reminder of the influence of the devil, that if the left wants us to think that, number one, God is a sissy. Number two, that the devil doesn't exist, that there is no such thing as Satan. And if you take that position, the world makes no sense. All the bad things that happen in the world just don't make any sense. Submarine just went down last week with all the lives lost, like 80 people, 80 sailors it was an Indonesian submarine, part of the Indonesian Navy, and that's now at the bottom of the ocean. So things like that make no sense absent the Satan. And so when we realize that that's basically who we're fighting here, we're asking the Lord for protection from Satan, not from ourselves, but from Satan and the influences of Satan. So that's the reason I like to read that book. It's inspiring that way. Excuse me. There we go. And now, the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, very good. And so when I come back, I'm going to be reading a very important chapter from the book Power Hungry. Thank you very much. And it's chapter 17. And because I was seriously considering not reading anything else from the book, because most of it is, there's so much of it that's very detailed, statistics and whatnot, and the last thing the true conservative wants to do is walking around with a pocket full of statistics. If you try to get into arguments or debates with the left, taking that kind of approach, they'll eat you up. They'll just eat you up. They love these ersatz conservatives that run around with all kinds of statistics. They just let you wear yourself out and then taunt and tease you. So anyways, so there's always some good sloganeering that can be done with this book. Who cares about Denmark? If Denmark jumped off a bridge, would you too? That was from the chapter yesterday on Denmark. And another one is energy is irrelevant, power is the key. Okay, we need power to run our smartphones, power to run everything in our lives. For the lights, the air conditioning, our automobiles, etc. So power is the issue. They may be all about energy. We're all about power, and we're interested in reliable power. So now this is, in this section, again, he divided the book up into sections, and this is a section where he is debunking various myths and the left creates myths. That's part of what they do. The myth of the general strike, for instance. They do that, and they do it to have a psychological impact on their enemies, and their enemies are anybody who disagrees with them. So, chapter 17, oil is dirty, is the myth that the author is about to take on. You've heard it dozens of times. Oil is a dirty fuel. Oil is polluting the air and the water, and it is despoiling the planet. Here's the reality. The world isn't using too much oil. It's not using enough. Whether the issue is guerrillas in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, tropical rainforests in Sumatra, or the health and welfare of women and young children in the developing world, the solution is abundantly clear. The world needs more oil consumption, not less. While that may sound like a statement designed to cheer the hearts of Houston-based energy tycoons, the easily provable truth is that hundreds of millions of people desperately need better fuels and stoves to help them cook their food. Simply put, they need more power in their kitchens. Again, power is the key. Oil should be seen as an essential ingredient in the effort to save the world's most endangered animals, as well as huge swaths of tropical forests. More oil consumption among the world's energy poor would help save the lives of hundreds of thousands of impoverished people every year who die premature deaths because of indoor air pollution caused by burning biomass. A little aside here. I was in the United States Air Force for 11 years, and I had there was a roommate. He was a guy that lived in, well, as a matter of fact, he started as a roommate anyways, him and his girlfriend. But anyways, he had been to Korea, living in South Korea. And at the time, this is in the 80s, back in the day when South Korea was a poor country. South Korea isn't anymore. It's a very wealthy country now, but it was poor at the time. And the locals lived in what we called hooches. And so there was, he said, frequently stories of, because a lot of the American GIs would shack up with Korean women, and then instead of living in the dormitories on base, they would live in this woman's hooch. And that in the winter months, that it was inevitable that you would get at least one story. You'd hear one story about an American serviceman and his girlfriend were found dead in their hooch from carbon monoxide poisoning, because in order to stay warm, they would have like a hibachi or something on, and of course that would then fill the place with carbon monoxide and kill them. And so that's what he's talking about here. The issue, once again, back to the book, the issue, once again, is one of density. The world's most impoverished people have no choice but to cook their food and heat their homes with fuels that have low energy density, such as straw, dung, twigs, wood, and leaves. They are denuding the landscape of biomass in their struggle to survive, but in doing so, they are also contributing to deforestation and to the problem of airborne soot, which is a major contributor to global climate change. Furthermore, those same low-density fuels, which are used in low-power cooking stoves, are sickening and killing thousands of people per day. Clean-burning, high-energy density liquid petroleum gas, such as propane and butane, as well as kerosene and gasoline, are the best solution to these problems. I do not make this heretical claim that we should be using more oil lightly, nor am I denying the oil's many deleterious effects on the environment. Over the past century, the oil industry has had countless spills, both offshore and onshore, that have caused serious damage. Burning refined oil products pollutes the air. Oil refining is a gritty, dangerous, capital-intensive business. Accidents at refineries, sabotage and carelessness, shoddy production practices. But the whole thing that he's missing here, I want to say right now before I forget it, is that he is acting as though oil is a sentient life form. This is one of the left's favorite tricks. They do it with COVID all the time. They want to make sure that you think of the lockdown as being COVID related, that the COVID virus is what's responsible for the lockdown. The COVID virus is not a sentient life form. It doesn't make decisions. It has no willpower. It does no such thing. It's part of the, what do you call it, about determinism. That's what it is. It's basically part of deterministic thinking, that COVID is this giant power that forces us to do certain things, lockdowns, for instance. But it's BS. The same thing is happening. He's falling into that same trap, saying that it is, let's see, how does he put it here? I do not, lightly, I'm not denying oil's many deleterious effects on the environment. Again, as though oil is a sentient life form, as though oil walks on two legs and has a will of its own and makes decisions of its own. The truth of the matter is, it is the individuals that use oil that create the problems. For instance, the spills offshore and onshore are created by people, not oil. Let's see, burning refined oil products pollutes the air. People burn oil products that pollute the air, and people can find ways to mitigate that, and have done so, at least as far as automobiles are concerned. Automobiles are much cleaner. The engines are much more efficient today than they were in the 1950s. Oil refining is a gritty, dangerous, capital-intensive business. People that refine oil, okay, accidents at refineries. People are involved in accidents. Accidents are not a sentient life form. Sabotage and carelessness are not a sentient life form. Shoddy production practices, and it says here, Texaco's shoddy production practices in Ecuador when it operated in that country from the 60s, early 90s. But that's done by individuals. It isn't oil. The left wants you to think that oil is a sort of a sentient life form, and it is some kind of an ugly beast that has to be like a dragon. Let's put it that way. That oil is a dragon that must be slayed. No, it isn't. It is how we use oil, any type of energy. We could do the same thing with wind and solar. You could make the same arguments. And wind is not a sentient life form. Solar is not a sentient life form. Neither is oil. It is how we use forms of energy, how we use our power, that makes a difference to you and I, human beings that are sentient life forms that make the decisions and sometimes have errors in judgment that create problems. Let's see. I've personally seen and written about dozens of examples of lousy environmental practices in the oil fields of Texas and Oklahoma. By whom? Who's doing the things? Again, it's not oil. Oil doesn't create practices. People do. Nor am I denying the corruption that comes with oil. Petroleum has spawned kleptocracies all over the world. Most of the Middle Eastern petrostates are run by corrupt royal families who have effectively been stealing the mineral wealth of their countrymen for decades. Okay, at least there he's getting again to, whether it's true or not, he doesn't supply any footnotes to this particular theory, but that's the theory, the idea the left wants you to believe, of course, is that all of the royals in the petrostates are, like he's claiming, kleptocracies. But again, he provides no proof or evidence of that whatsoever, so you should ignore that. But anyways, or consider the corruption in Equatorial Guinea. Okay, and the corruption is, whose corruption? Who's corrupt? Name the name. Is it the president of Equatorial Guinea? Is it the all of the politicians? Is it the businessmen? Okay, because right now when you say the corruption, It makes no sense. Your statement makes no sense. It's a tiny oil-rich country in West Africa that's been ruthlessly ruled. Okay, now we finally get to an actual human being, Teodoro Obiang, since the 70s. 2009, Transparency International named Obiang's country the 12th most corrupt locale in the world, ranking it 168th in the Corruption Perceptions Index, a rank that puts it in a tie with another petrostate, Iran. Two other petrostates, Chad and Iraq, also make the list of the most corrupt places. So what? That's what that leaves me with. So what? Who cares what it is that Transparency International, who at Transparency International came up with this, let me see, they say it says Transparency International named. Transparency International, again, is not a sentient life form. It's a business. It's either a non-profit business or a for-profit business. It's not a sentient life form. Somebody created the report, and is that what that means? They named, does that mean they had a report, a study, a survey, a poll? What? No answer. The current poster boy among the petro-kleptocrats, Teodoro Nguema Obiang, the son of the Equatorial Guinea's president. Let me see, in November 2009, I'm going to skip that because I don't care. Again, it's just, we're going back to... now the New York Times says, so therefore it has to be true if the New York Times says it. Let me see what else. My conversion to the idea that oil is green occurred in late 2007, and I think that's an important statement here. My conversion to the idea that oil is green. That's a beautiful statement, a beautiful slogan. Put it on a t-shirt, put it on a bumper sticker. Oil is green. But again, my conversion to the idea that oil is green occurred in late 2007 when I was watching a 60 Minutes report on the death of 10 mountain gorillas in Virunga National Park in Congo. The mountain gorillas are among the most threatened species, allegedly, on the planet. After providing a few details about the deaths of the apes, reporter Anderson Cooper got to the motive. The gorillas hadn't been killed by poachers eager for a trophy or even for food. They were killed because of a shortage of energy. Looking at the camera, Cooper held up a handful of black flakes and explained that the gorillas were killed for this: charcoal. The problem, he said, was that more than 1 million people in this area, practically everyone, used charcoal to cook their food. It's made by burning the trees in the gorillas' forest. And the gorillas in Virunga were in the way of the charcoal makers who were supplying fuel to the local population. Robert Muir of the Frankfurt Zoological Society told Cooper that solving the problem in Virunga was simple. Provide alternative fuel. Butane, for example. With a few thousand butane stoves and enough fuel to keep them running, Muir explained that charcoal makers could be put out of business almost immediately. Now, a couple of things. First of all, who asked Cooper? Who asked him? This is typical of the left. They love to stick their nose where it doesn't belong. They go look for trouble. How is it any of his business? It isn't. So again, one of my favorite right-wing slogans is, "Who asked you? Who asked you?" Then let me see. And he said they were killed because of a shortage of energy. Who? Who is it that killed these gorillas? What are the names? Was it a part of a corporate strategy? What was the corporation that did this? And so again, and all of this is not supported by footnotes or anything of that nature. So, except for the last part where they're talking about charcoal makers could be put out of business almost immediately, and that butane comes to the rescue. Okay. In short, the easiest and fastest way to preserve one of the world's most endangered species was not to forge more treaties banning trade, to create new regulations, or to fund more police to patrol the park. Instead, the simplest solution was to increase the use of oil products. Only about 700 mountain gorillas remain on the planet. About half live in Virunga, one of the most important parks in Africa. Let's see what else we've got here. In April 2009, I corresponded via email with Emmanuel de Marodi, the chief warden for the Virunga National Park. From a biodiversity perspective, there's nothing more important in Africa than Virunga. The destruction of Virunga will be a loss to the whole of humanity, not just Africa. Hundreds of thousands of people live in the areas surrounding the park, but only a few of them have electricity. With few other sources of energy, the locals have little choice but to buy charcoal produced from wood that is cut illegally from the park. De Marodi and his fellow park managers have declared that the charcoal trade stands as the single biggest threat to the mountain gorillas and other flora and fauna in the park. Now, The other thing is, again, is what we're getting with the environmentalist aspect is we're pitting human beings against the environment. That's always the thing that you have to watch out for here. There's a line of thinking, and I don't know where they get it, and I really don't care, but it's completely wrong that there is natural and there's man-made. And the left is so brainwashed everybody in the world to believing that myth. There's no such thing. Man-made, the difference when you're saying natural and man-made is that somehow human beings aren't natural. Where did we come from then? Were we beamed here from outer space? Is that what they're trying to imply? And if they do, then they run against their own educational theories when they're supporting Darwinism. Okay, because Darwinism says that we're as natural as anything and everything else on the planet. And until there is absolute proof, and I mean absolute, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but bulletproof proof that we come from somewhere else, then we come from the earth. That means we are as natural as the gorillas. It also means that our needs and priorities come first, period. Conservatives recognize that value. Human wants and needs come first. Okay? If we can save the mountain gorillas in the process, where we can get what we need or what we want and not disturb the mountain gorillas, fine. But our wants and needs come first. And then again, this awful idea of going and sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. There's no problem. Your life is so perfect, and the life in the United States is so perfect that you can afford to go to Africa and tell everybody there how to live. So, but in any case, the point is that he's making the point here: oil is green. That by using an oil product, butane, they could get rid of the use of charcoal. I'm more concerned with using charcoal and how it is direct deleterious effect on the human beings. They're going to be taking in and breathing air that is more polluted than butane. My understanding is that butane burns cleaner than does coal, that you're going to have very little pollutants from butane. And so that's more my concern than how it's going to affect the lowland gorillas. But the point is, when you're dealing with a lefty, you can make that case if you want to, that oil is green because it will save the mountain gorillas, not the lowland gorillas. Back to the book. Although the solution to the charcoal trade is obvious, the butane stoves and the fuel they need are simply too expensive for most of the people who live near the park. Demarodi said supplying the stoves and the fuel would cost millions of dollars. But that cost must be compared with the value of keeping the mountain gorillas safe in the wild. No. What needs to be is the air that the people are going to breathe burning charcoal versus the quality of the air that they're going to breathe burning butane. That's the comparison that needs to be made. Let me see. Skip all this. Without butane as an option, Demarodi said Demarodi and his team are trying to ramp up the production of biomass briquettes, which they will hope will cut the demand for charcoal and therefore slow the rate of deforestation in Virunga. The plight of the gorillas, I don't care. Let's go on to something else. What do we have here? Here's another one about palm oil, and the tiger is about to go extinct. Although gorillas, tigers, and apes are important, the most important beneficiary of more widespread use of oil would be humans. Now we're getting somewhere. And to be more specific, it would be the millions of young children and women who are sickened or who die prematurely every year from indoor air pollution caused by burning of biomass, including coal, the coal that they're getting from the trees that they're cutting down. That's my concern. Primary concern. Secondary, gorillas, tigers, apes, all that stuff. In 2007, the World Health Organization estimated that indoor air pollution was killing 500,000 people in India every year, most of them women and children. The agency also found that air pollution levels in some kitchens in rural India were 30 times higher than recommended, and that the pollution was 6 times as bad as that found in New Delhi. Worldwide, as many as 1.6 million people per year are dying premature deaths due to indoor air pollution. About 37% of the world's population relies on solid fuels, straw, wood, dung, or coal, to cook their meals. These low-quality fuels, combined with inadequate ventilation when the cooking is done, often results in the living areas being filled with a variety of noxious pollutants, including soot, carbon monoxide, benzene, formaldehyde, and even dioxin. Continued exposure to polluted indoor air can result in numerous illnesses ranging from relatively minor problems such as headaches and eye irritation to deadly conditions such as asthma, pneumonia, blindness, lung cancer, tuberculosis, and low birth weight in children, born to mothers who are exposed to indoor air pollution during pregnancy. Despite these numbers, the problems of indoor air pollution doesn't get nearly as much attention as other public health issues such as vaccination or safe drinking water. One of the most passionate voices proclaiming the need for more hydrocarbon use among the world's poor is that of Kirk R. Smith, a professor of global environmental health at the University of California, Berkeley. He wrote a piece for Science magazine called In Praise of Petroleum, in which he challenged the notion that for the poor, as for everyone else, only renewable energy sources qualify as sustainable. He went on to say, what possible better use for high-efficiency, clean-burning fossil fuels, such as liquefied petroleum gas, than providing high-quality energy services for poor households? When I interviewed Smith in July 2009, he explained that poor women in rural areas of developing countries are about as low on the totem pole globally as you can get. They don't have anybody speaking for them, certainly not Hillary Clinton. They don't have their own Sierra Club or whatever. They certainly also don't have their own national organization for women. And again, nothing from the National Organization for Women on the plight of these women and children. Even if you were to substantiate substitute LPG for all of the biomass used for cooking in the world, it would have very little impact on overall resources. Why ask the poor to take on the need to use fancy, new, novel, untested renewable energy devices when we have something that's good for them? They have many other needs, and this is a great thing for them. Reducing the amount of biomass used for cooking in the developing world would also reduce black carbon emissions, soot particles from burning biomass, as well as from other sources such as coal-fired power plants and diesel engines are the second largest man-made contributor. Here we go with the man-made crap again, to global climate change. In the polar regions of the Arctic and Antarctic, in other areas where snow and ice are prominent, deposition of black carbon particles causes the surface to absorb more solar radiation and therefore accelerates the melting process. Research has shown that these black carbon deposits may be causing more of the Arctic climate change than all other man-made causes combined. But I noticed that they're not dealing with volcanoes. We have volcanoes all over the world that are going off on a regular basis and not talking about the soot that they're putting out. And I'm willing to bet you that any one of those volcanoes probably puts 10, 100, thousands of times more soot into the air and contributes to more so-called Arctic melting and global warming than anything else human beings are doing. About one-third of all the black carbon emissions on the planet come from inefficient cook stoves used in households in the developing world. By pushing more efficient biomass stoves, as well as promoting increased use of stoves that use butane, propane, or other clean-burning fuels, those releases could be cut dramatically. And even better, the new stoves would reduce the number of trees being cut to produce charcoal in developing countries like Congo, a process Smith calls the most greenhouse-intensive fuel cycle in the world. Another thing that it just occurred to me as I'm reading this, that the reason you don't hear much from the left about that is that the left, one of the let's say the planks in the left's platform, so to speak, is overpopulation. And so my theory is that the reason that you don't hear much left talking about how women and children are dying in various places from indoor air pollution is because they shrug it off and say, well, the world's overpopulated as it is. Okay, that it furthers one of their theories, so to speak. And so the left really doesn't give a hoot about the women and children that are dying because, it conflicts with one of their goals, which is to reduce what they think of as overpopulation. Moving the world's rural poor away from charcoal to cleaner, denser fuels such as LPG and refined oil products will not only help save the world's forests and endangered animals, it will also dramatically improve their health and their standard of living. But to do that, we must move past the idea that oil is bad. The reality is that oil is greener than nearly everything else that might replace it. Natural gas is greener still. If we want to improve the lot of the world's poorest people, and women and girls in particular, we should be using more of both. And so this is the chapter in the book so far that if you're going to get this book, that's the chapter chapter 17 that you need to read because again it promotes petroleum and petroleum products, and also he's a little, like I said, he's off. He could have made a much more persuasive argument if he didn't divide things into natural and man-made, because once you get into that, you are aiding and abetting the left in their arguments. So the best way to destroy left-wing environmentalism is for us to get our used to the idea that we're as natural as anything else. I'm as natural as the tigers. I'm as natural as the gorillas. I'm as natural as the apes, the forests, or anything else. My wants and needs matter, and human beings' wants and needs matter most. Okay, so we don't get trapped in that natural versus man-made crap. So oil is green. That's the one thing to take away from this chapter. Oil is green. It's better than what's being currently used, and imagine as much money as it's going to cost. He says millions. That one guy in the chapter says it's going to be millions to convert everything over from biomass to, say, butane. How much more would it be if they were going to go ahead and put in wind turbines? And what would you have? You have to have land that supports that. It has to be like a desert or a savanna or something. You can't put, obviously, wind turbines in the middle of a forest. Okay, so how much forest would they have to cut down in the Congo to get a big enough wind farm field to be able to generate enough electricity so that people don't have to use dung for a power source? Same thing with using solar energy. How many solar panels? And is that going to fit in, or are they going to have to end up cutting down large swaths of forest to make room for it? And how much is that going to cost? My guess off the top of my head, I would think 10 times the amount of money than using the cost to switch over to butane or other petrochemicals. So, again, oil is green, and we've been sold a bill of goods by the left. We've been brainwashed to believe things that just simply aren't true. That oil is some kind of a man-made product, and that human beings are polluting the earth with it. Oil is from the earth. It's as natural as anything else. So is natural gas. So is coal. And for that matter, so is the biomass that's being used. But the point is that oil and oil products are very often more efficient and have what they call energy density. That's the issue there, energy density. But oil is green. That's the slogan you want to remember. You might want to get a T-shirt or a bumper sticker and have that slogan emblazoned on it. And so check your assumptions. Whatever it is that you assume, check them. Because very often you're going to find that you're making your assumptions because you've been brainwashed by the left to assume or presume a certain way. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the one of the things I was thinking about the other day was how best to express show you an example of how it is that works with proving a negative. The left loves, it's their favorite tactic to try to get you to prove a negative, because when you try to do that and you're unaware that that's what you're doing, you end up not only frustrated, but you end up feeling as though you're going insane. You're challenging your own sanity. You end up challenging your own knowledge. If I don't know this, then how can I know anything else? And it shuts you up. You don't talk, you don't argue, you don't debate. Maybe you don't even bother to vote anymore. And you have now been neutralized, and the left just steps in and starts taking over and running the place. So an excellent example of that is 2 plus 3 equals 5. You tell somebody 2 plus 3 equals 5. Now, they come back and they paraphrase. Oh, so what you're saying is 2 plus 3 can't equal anything else other than 5. Now, at first, you're tempted to go along with this, and you may say, well, that's correct. Well, how is it so? Why couldn't it equal 4? Why couldn't it equal 6? Why couldn't it equal 3.1? And you're not going to have an answer for that. You're going to rack your brains, but you think you should have an answer for it. Because there's a theory that we have that whatever's true of the obverse must also be true of the inverse. And so that's what you think you're dealing with here, that the obverse of 3 plus 2 equals 5, or the inverse of 3 plus 2 equals 5, is that 3 plus 2 cannot equal anything other than 5. But that's not it. The obverse is 2 plus 3 equals 5. The inverse is 3 plus 2 equals 5. Okay? So be aware of that type of thing. Anytime somebody comes to you and says, what you're saying is, you make a statement and they try to paraphrase, they try to translate, if you will, shut it down. No, you say. I spoke plain English. Or for those of you that live in other countries, I spoke plain Arabic, Egyptian, whatever language it is that you happen to speak. Primarily, I spoke clearly. And if you didn't listen, that's your problem. Don't let them paraphrase. It's one of the cheapest tactics that they've got to get you to try to prove a negative, and in so doing, you end up rattling your own cage, because what you end up doing is thinking, let's see, 2 plus 3 equals 5, and then when they come back and they want you to prove this negative, you think you should be able to do it. And if you can't, you think, well, if I can't even know that 2 plus 3 equals 5 with certainty, how can I know that going into trillions and trillions of debt is wrong? How can I know that anything is wrong? How do I know that burglary is wrong? You end up questioning, like I said, your very sanity. And it will freeze you up and lock you up, and you end up, when the left steps in and starts coming up with all kinds of harebrained schemes, like what is known as critical race theory, and all this crap about whiteness, you end up turning away, walking away, and letting them have their way. Okay? Because again, if you can't know that 3 plus 2 equals 5, how can you know anything else? Don't let them put you in the position of proving a negative. Listen carefully. 2 ways that they prove the negative, play the game, is to make an arbitrary claim, you're a Nazi, or they paraphrase. Okay, they can also do it with questions, but basically the questions involve paraphrasing. So what you're saying, and when you hear them saying, so what you're saying, shut it down. No, you're not listening. I made myself clear. If you have to and you can, repeat yourself exactly from word for word, of course, go ahead and do it. But don't let the left get away with ripping you off. The left is easily defeated once you understand their tricks. And that's all they're about, tricks. They have nothing to say, nothing to offer. Get used to that idea. The left is nothing but tricks. And there's a commercial I like, Silly Rabbit, tricks are for kids. Back in a minute. Thank you. That brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. Be honest, be smart, and be beautiful. And remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.